Long ago, in a land hidden beyond rolling hills and silver rivers, there stood a magnificent castle. Its towers touched the clouds, its gardens bloomed with eternal beauty, and within its golden walls lived a young prince. He was admired by all who saw him for his striking appearance, his wealth, and his power. But beauty on the outside often hides a different truth within. The prince was cold, proud, and utterly without kindness. On a stormy night, as rain lashed against the castle windows and lightning tore across the sky, a frail old woman appeared at the gates. Her cloak was soaked, her hands trembling, and in her grasp she held a single red rose. She begged gently. The doors opened, and there stood the prince. The old woman spoke, her voice weak but hopeful. She begged for shelter just for the night, offering the rose in return. But the prince looked at her with nothing but disgust. He mocked her, rejected her, and ordered her to leave. Suddenly, the air changed. The old woman's voice grew strong. Her eyes glowed with power. And before the prince could react, she transformed. No longer a helpless beggar, but a radiant enchantress shining with magic. She spoke not with anger alone, but with truth. She warned him that he judged only appearances, that true beauty lives within the heart. But the prince had already made his choice. With a single motion of her hand, the enchantress cast her spell. The prince's body twisted, changed. His beauty vanished, replaced by fur, claws, and fangs. He became a beast, and he was not alone in his punishment. The servants, the entire castle, were bound by the curse, turned into lifeless forms or enchanted objects, forever trapped within those walls. Then the enchantress placed the rose under a glass dome. Its petals glowed softly, fragile, and fading with time. She spoke one final condition. If the beast could learn to love and earn love in return before the last petal fell, the curse would be broken. But if he failed, he would remain a beast forever. And just like that, she vanished, leaving behind silence and sorrow. Far away from that cursed castle, in a quiet little village, lived a man named Maurice. Once he had been wealthy, a successful merchant with ships that sailed across distant seas. But fate had not been kind. A terrible storm had taken everything from him. His ships, his fortune, all lost to the depths of the ocean. Now he lived in a small cottage with his 6 children. The house was simple, the walls worn, but inside there was warmth. There was life, and there was love. Well, for some. Maurice's daughters often complained about their lost riches, their lost comfort. They longed for silk dresses, jewels, and luxury. But among them, there was one who saw the world differently. Belle. Belle was kind, thoughtful, and quietly strong. She didn't long for riches. She found joy in simple things. A book, a quiet morning, a smile from her father. When others complained, Belle only smiled and reminded them that having each other was enough. But not everyone in the village shared Belle's gentle heart. There was one man who believed he deserved everything he desired. His name was Gaston. Strong, handsome, admired by all, and consumed by pride. One morning, without hesitation, Gaston marched into Maurice's home. He didn't ask softly. He didn't wait patiently. He declared his intention. He wanted to marry Belle. Maurice was taken aback, surprised by the sudden demand, but before he could answer, Belle stepped forward, calm, unshaken, and with quiet strength she refused. Gaston could not believe it. No one had ever said no to him. His pride cracked, his anger rose. He warned her that she would regret her decision, and stormed out, humiliated. But Belle did not regret it. She returned to her peaceful life, unbothered, unchanged, still dreaming of something more. Days later, a spark of hope arrived. Maurice received news that one of his lost ships had returned. Overjoyed, he prepared for a journey. Perhaps things would finally change. Before leaving, his daughters gathered around him, each asking for gifts, jewels, silks, riches. But when Maurice turned to Belle, her request was simple. She asked only for a rose. He smiled, promised her, and set off. But the journey back was not as kind. A violent storm rose, the sky darkened, the winds howled like spirits in the night. Maurice lost his way, deep within a cold, endless forest. Alone, frightened, desperate, he searched for shelter. And then, through the mist, he saw it. A castle. Dark, massive, silent. The gates opened their own accord, as if inviting him inside. Inside, the castle felt alive. Candles lit themselves, doors opened without touch, yet no one appeared.
Hungry and exhausted, Maurice found a table filled with food. With trembling hands, he apologized and ate. Then he stepped into the garden. And there, under a blanket of snow, he saw it, a single, glowing red rose. He smiled softly, thinking only of Belle, and gently he plucked it. A sudden roar, loud, echoing. A terrifying voice shattered the silence, a roar filled with fury. The beast had come. He emerged from the shadows, massive, monstrous, eyes burning with rage. Maurice fell to his knees, pleading, explaining, begging for mercy. "It was just a rose for my daughter." But the beast, he knew only anger. He declared Maurice must pay with his life. Back at home, Belle waited. Days passed, no sign of her father. Her heart filled with worry. And so, she made a decision. She would find him, no matter the cost. After days of searching, she reached the castle. Cold, dark, foreboding. She called out, her voice echoing through the halls. And finally, she found him, locked away, weak, but alive. Relief flooded her, but it was short-lived. The beast appeared, demanding to know why she had come. And in that moment, Belle made a choice that would change everything. She stepped forward, fear in her eyes, but courage in her voice. She offered herself in exchange for her father's freedom. The beast paused, surprised, conflicted. Then he agreed. Maurice was released, heartbroken, begging her not to stay. But Belle did not turn back. That night, she entered the castle not as a guest, but as a prisoner. The beast's voice echoed coldly, laying down his rules, demanding obedience. But Belle did not bow. She stood her ground, unafraid. And yet, when she entered her room, everything changed. It was beautiful, more magnificent than anything she had ever seen. Golden curtains, soft light, a world of comfort within a prison. And as she stood there, trying to understand, the impossible happened. The castle spoke. A teapot greeted her kindly. A wardrobe welcomed her warmly. The castle was alive, not cursed with darkness alone, but filled with hearts still hoping. For the first time, Belle's fear softened. The next evening, Belle and the beast sat together at the same table, in silence. No words were spoken, only the quiet sound of distance between two souls. But the beast watched her, not with anger, not with cruelty, but with something new, curiosity. Somewhere, deep within the cursed walls, the first fragile thread of change had begun. Days slowly turned into weeks, and as time passed within the walls of the enchanted castle, winter arrived. Snow fell quietly from the sky, covering the vast gardens in a blanket of white. The fountains stood frozen in time, and the trees silent and still, like watchful guardians of a forgotten world. High above in her chamber, Belle stood by the window. Her fingers rested lightly against the cold glass as she watched the snow drift down. Yet her eyes carried something deeper, a quiet sadness. Her thoughts were far away. With her father, she wished he could see this. Though the castle was grand, filled with wonders beyond imagination, it was still a prison. One evening, Belle stood before the great doors. The outside world stretched beyond them, dark forest, endless and unknown. She spoke quietly to herself. She could not stay there forever. Behind her, gentle voices tried to stop her. The enchanted objects, ever kind, ever hopeful. The teapot spoke softly, urging her not to leave, telling her that their master was not as cruel as he seemed. But Belle shook her head. They did not understand. Her father was alone, and that truth weighed heavier than fear. That night, when silence fell upon the castle, Belle made her choice. She wrapped herself in a cloak, her heart racing, her breath unsteady, and without looking back, she ran. From the shadows, they appeared. Wolves. Their eyes glowed in the dark. Their breath rose like smoke in the icy air. Belle whispered a single word, a plea, or perhaps a realization. She stepped back, but they followed. They circled her, slowly, patiently. Belle screamed. She ran. Her feet slipped against the snow, and she fell. The wolves closed in, closer and closer. And just as hope began to fade, a massive roar tore through the night. The beast had come. With fury and force, he burst into the clearing. He commanded the wolves to leave her, his voice filled with power. Then he fought. Claws struck through the air, teeth bared, snow scattered beneath the force of battle. The wolves attacked from all sides. With one final powerful roar, he drove them back into the darkness. Silence returned. The beast stood still, his breath heavy, his strength fading. And then he fell into the snow. Belle rushed to him. Fear gone, only concern remained. Her voice trembled as realization took hold. He'd come back for her. The beast groaned in pain, wounded, bleeding. Belle hesitated, just for a moment. Then she chose. She helped him to his feet, her voice gentle now, guiding him, telling him to come. Back at the castle, the warmth returned. Belle worked carefully, cleaning his wounds, her hands steady, but her heart changed. She warned him it would hurt. The beast braced himself, telling her to continue. He winced, but did not pull away. She wrapped his arm with care, every movement softer than before. And then, in a voice barely spoken, he thanked her. Belle looked at him, and quietly, she thanked him in return for saving her life. And in that moment, something changed. For the first time, they truly saw each other. Not as captor and prisoner, not as monster and victim, but as two souls beginning to understand. From that day on, the cold distance between them began to melt, like winter snow, touched by the first light of spring. They began to speak. At first, only a little. The beast asked her about her books, wondering why she loved them so much. Belle smiled, explaining that stories could take her anywhere, places she had never seen, lives she had never lived. The beast listened, quiet, thoughtful. He admitted he had never learned to enjoy such things. Belle offered to teach him. There was hesitation. And then, he agreed. Days passed, and something long forgotten returned to the castle. Laughter. They walked together through the snowy gardens, side by side, no longer strangers. They shared stories by the warmth of the fire. One evening, a small, unexpected moment. Belle laughed. The beast had tried to sit properly at the table, awkward, uncertain. She teased him gently, telling him he was doing it wrong. He protested, defended himself. But she only laughed more. And though he tried to resist, the beast smiled, a real smile. From the shadows, the enchanted objects watched, their voices filled with quiet joy. They whispered that their master was smiling again. One morning, the beast led Belle through the castle. His steps slower than usual, almost nervous. He told her he had something to show her. They stopped before great doors, tall, heavy, mysterious. He opened them, and Belle gasped. Before her stretched a library beyond imagination. Shelves upon shelves filled with countless books. Stories waiting to be discovered, worlds waiting to be explored. Her voice was filled with wonder. She asked if it was truly real. The beast answered quietly. It was hers. All of it. Belle turned to him, eyes shining with emotion. She could hardly believe it. And in a moment of pure joy, she ran forward, overwhelmed, grateful, happy. She called it the most wonderful gift she had ever received. And when she turned back, she smiled at him, not politely, not cautiously, but truly. And in that single moment, the beast felt something new, something warm, something light, happiness. Winter continued beyond the castle walls, but inside, everything had changed. The beast was no longer just a monster. Belle was no longer just a prisoner. Between them, something had begun. Not yet love, but something real, something growing, something that might one day break the curse. The days grew quieter, but far more meaningful. The bond between Belle and the beast was no longer built on fear, but something neither of them could yet name. One evening, bathed in golden firelight, Belle sat peacefully, lost in the pages of her book. Nearby, the beast stood in silence, hesitant, uncertain, as though gathering courage for something simple yet deeply important. At last, he spoke, softly. "I have something for you." Belle looked up, a gentle curiosity in her eyes. "Another gift?" she asked. The beast nodded and slowly stepped forward. In his hands, a mirror, beautifully framed, its surface shimmering, almost alive. "This is no ordinary mirror," he said quietly. "It shows whatever you wish to see." Belle rose slowly, drawn toward it. "Anything?" she asked. "Yes," the beast replied. Carefully, Belle held the mirror, her voice softened with longing. "I want to see my father." The surface rippled like water. Then, slowly, an image appeared. Maurice. But something was wrong. He was alone, weak, lost in the cold wilderness, wandering aimlessly, calling out into the empty air. "Belle! Belle! He's in danger!" she cried. Tears filled her eyes as she turned to the beast. "I have to go to him. Please, I need to save him." The beast stood frozen, silent. Within him, something old returned, a fear he had buried, the fear of being alone. "If you leave, you might never come back." Belle stepped closer, her voice gentle but certain. "I won't forget you." The beast looked into her eyes, searching, hoping, fearing. And then he made the greatest sacrifice of all. "Then go." Belle blinked, surprised. "What?" she whispered. "Take the mirror," he said. "It will guide you." His voice grew heavier. "I would rather see you safe than keep you here against your will." Her heart ached. "Thank you," she whispered. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. No words, only feeling. Then Belle turned and walked away. The castle fell still. The beast walked slowly through its halls, each step heavier than the last. Everything felt colder, empty. He stood before the enchanted rose, its glow faint, its life nearly gone. "She's gone," he murmured, and for the first time since the curse began, he stopped, hoping. Far away, Belle found her father. She brought him home safely. Maurice embraced her tightly. "I thought I'd lost you," he cried. "I'm here, father," Belle said softly. But though she had returned, something within her had changed. Her home felt unfamiliar, her heart unsettled. Her sisters noticed, her silence, her distant gaze. "You've changed," one said. "Where were you?" another demanded. Belle hesitated. Then she told them everything. The castle, the magic, the beast. Her sisters exchanged glances, not of wonder, but jealousy. "A castle?" whispered one. "With jewels and dresses? And a creature who gives you gifts?" the other added. Their eyes gleamed with envy. Meanwhile, Gaston had not forgotten Belle. The moment he heard she had returned, he came to her. "Belle," Gaston called confidently. But this time, Belle did not smile. "I've come again," Gaston said proudly. "Now you'll accept me." Belle shook her head. "No." Gaston's expression hardened. "Why?" he demanded. Belle met his gaze, calm, certain. "Because I've seen what truly matters, and it's not you." The words struck deeply. Gaston's pride turned to anger. "If she won't love me," he muttered, "then I'll make sure she has no one else." When Maurice spoke of the beast, Gaston saw his chance. "A monster?" he shouted to the villagers. "Living in a castle?" Fear spread quickly. Whispers turned to panic. "We must destroy it," Gaston declared, "before it harms us all." The villagers agreed. Torches were lit, weapons raised. A mob began to form, and together they marched toward the castle. Far away, the enchanted rose continued to fade. Petals fell one by one. The beast sat alone in darkness. "She won't come back," he whispered. Only one petal remained. That night, Belle dreamed. She saw the castle, the beast, lying still, fading. "No!" she cried, waking suddenly. Her heart raced. "He's dying," she said. She grabbed the mirror, and there it was. The beast, weak, barely alive. Tears filled her eyes. "I have to go back," she said. Maurice looked at her and understood everything. "Then go, my child." Belle ran through the forest faster than ever before. The wind howled, branches scraped past her. "Hold on," she whispered. "Please, hold on." In the distance, the castle appeared. But something was different. It was no longer silent. It burned with light. Firelight. The villagers had arrived. The night sky burned with fire. Torches blazed as villagers marched toward the castle, their voices filled with fear and fury. "Destroy the monster!" they cried. At their head stood Gaston, determined, proud, unstoppable. He declared that tonight it would all end. Heavy drums, gates breaking open. The castle gates trembled, then burst open. The mob surged inside. But they were not alone. From every corner of the castle, the enchanted servants rose. They fought bravely. A teapot hurled boiling water. A wardrobe blocked the doors. Every object, every voice stood united. "Protect the master!" they cried. The silent halls became a battlefield. High above, in the tower, the beast sat alone. He did not move. He did not fight. He had lost all hope. "She's not coming," he whispered. The battle echoed below, but he remained still, until a voice broke through the chaos. "Beast!" His eyes widened. "Belle?" Belle ran into the castle, breathless, desperate. She searched through corridors, up the stairs, her heart racing. And finally, she found him. "We have to go," she said. The beast looked at her in disbelief. "You came back." "Of course I did," she said. "I couldn't leave you." And just like that, hope returned. But then a slow clap echoed. Gaston stepped forward. "What a touching reunion," he mocked. Belle stood in front of the beast. "Stop this, Gaston!" But he ignored her. He claimed the beast had bewitched her, that he was there to destroy it. The beast rose weakly. "Leave," he growled. Gaston laughed and attacked. Battle begins. Steel struck against claw. Blow after blow, Gaston forced the beast back. At first, the beast did not fight, but then he looked at Belle, and something awakened inside him. With a roar, he fought back. They battled across the rooftop. Rain poured, lightning flashed. The beast grew stronger, driven by something greater than anger. He seized Gaston, lifting him to the edge. "I could end this," he growled. Gaston trembled. He begged. The beast paused. Then he let him go. "Leave," he said. "I won't harm you." Silence, then a sudden strike sound. But Gaston could not accept defeat. He struck from behind. The beast gasped, wounded. At the same moment, Gaston slipped. His footing failed, and he fell into the darkness below. The beast collapsed. Belle rushed to him, holding him tightly. "No, please," she cried. Rain fell around them, cold and endless. "You can't leave me." The beast looked at her weakly. "You came back," he whispered. "I'm here," she said through tears. A single tear fell. He thanked her for everything. Above them, the final petal fell. "No," Belle whispered. She held him close and spoke from her heart. "I love you." Then a glow appeared, soft, Warm, growing brighter. The wind stilled, the rain paused. Light surrounded the beast, lifting him gently. Belle stepped back in awe. The magic transformed him. The fur faded, the claws disappeared, and in his place stood a prince, human once more. At the same moment, the castle came alive. The curse was broken. The enchanted servants became human again. The castle filled with joy. The prince stepped toward Belle. "Belle," he said softly. She smiled through tears. "It's you." He took her hands. "You saved me." She shook her head gently. "We saved each other." In time, the kingdoms celebrated. They were married in a grand and joyous ceremony. The castle became a place of love, of laughter, of life. Years passed, their home filled with happiness, with family, with memories. And together, they lived not by appearances, but by love. And so, their story reminds us that true beauty is found within.